Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Inslee for introducing this bill. I'm very proud to co-sponsor it with you. It's very needed, and the reason I know it's very needed is because the things you talked about I experienced as a boy. And I won't be redundant and go into the things that you've mentioned and the reasons why this program is so necessary, but I do want you to know that I normally don't support changing money from one area to another, like from the Department of Justice to these programs. But this is one of the most urgent needs in America. And it's been like this for the last 50 to 60 years. I can remember when we went to police headquarters with my mother after we'd been beaten and my father had beaten my mother, and the police sergeant said, "If you don't get these kids home, I'm going to have you arrested for child abuse." That's the way it was in those days. There was no place for a woman to hide, and the children had to experience this. At 4 o'clock in the morning, when you hear your mother being beaten, and you come down the stairs and your hair's standing straight up on the back of your head, and your father turns and says to you, "If you don't get back up and stare at the stairs, you're going to get some of this." Kids should not have to endure that. They should not ever have to endure that. And the women who are treated like that should never have to endure that as well. And it's a shame that there aren't more people talking about this, because this is something that's an urgent need. You're absolutely right, Mr. Inslee, about the chances for a child who's been abused like this to do the same things throughout the rest of their life. I was very fortunate that didn't happen, but I've known a lot of people who've experienced that who did. And I think it's a tragic thing. We really need to find a way to get these women and kids into shelter and away from these abusive parents, fathers, and sometimes mothers. And we need to help the women who are abused. As he just said, in the Native American community, there are women who are being raped and beaten, and there's really no place for them to turn. There's no registry so we can track these guys. That's a horrible thing to have to experience. So I just want to say to my colleagues, and as I said, I won't be redundant, but I was reading in our information that we use when we discuss these issues, I was reading that between 3.3 million and 10 million children witness domestic violence every year. Can you imagine? Up to 10 million kids witness domestic violence in the home and elsewhere every single year. That's unforgivable. And at one time, in one day, one 24-hour period, there were 18,000 children in the United States that received services and support because they were experiencing domestic violence in one day. That's something, in my opinion, that's inexcusable. This is a very, very important piece of legislation. I would urge all of my colleagues to vote for this. There should not be one negative vote on this, not one, because there are kids and women who are suffering sometimes every day. Sometimes the husband will beat the child and he'll turn around to the wife and say, "I'll never do that again," and he does it the next week. Sometimes he'll beat his wife and he puts his arms around her, and I've seen this firsthand. He says, "Honey, I'll never do that again." And the next week she's beaten again. And she sometimes has no place to go and she feels like there's no hope. It's extremely important that we give these women and these kids hope. And that's why I say to you, Mr. Inslee, thank you very much for introducing this bill, and I hope it passes unanimously. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.